Dr. Keith Newton, how you doing?
Dr. Sean Wallace, I'm a perky camper, man. Look at that smile. You're so happy to talk to me. I'm happy to talk to you, man. It's been too long.
It has been a while, and you have you have made it so that it's likely to be fairly long since you live so far away now, right?
Yeah.
So how's the weather out there?
Oh man, it is. It's hot with a medium case of COVID, man. Is what it is.
There we go. How's your family?
They're doing okay, man. Had some scares health-wise, because both my parents are getting older now, but they're into like the 57 years of marriage thing now. So it's, yeah, you hear those numbers and you're like, wow, how did you two
Yeah.
tolerate each other for so long? Like I know there's love, but I've heard the days in between where it's like, okay, you know what, I love you, but I need to be away from you for a little while. And me, I mean, I'm in a wall. I'm in a room with like all walls and just me, and I'm just like, no, I'm pretty comfy with this.
Yeah, my parents just celebrated 50 years this past July, so I got to be 51 years
Uh,
next month.
yeah.
Yeah,
You know
it's
what? That
it's
deserves that
crazy.
deserves a toast. And in fact, if we're
Oh
gonna toast
no.
anything,
Oh no.
why not
Uh,
toast to the great taste of Dr. Thunder?
yeah.
Celebrate 51 years. Ah, that's right. Congratulations. Remember, when you're going to celebrate your parents, get the great taste of Dr. Thunder and Dr. Thunder Diet. It goes down smooth.
Speaking of Dr. Thunder, someone, someone, as a sort of, I think you thought it was a congratulations, uh, uh, situated themselves in such a way that to get in my office when I was not there
Yep.
and put Dr. Thunder everywhere.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
and uh, now, what did you say? You said the only thing that you regretted was what?
Oh, yeah. The only thing that I regretted is that I could not get more Dr. Thunder. So, I know some of you are like confused, like what the heck is going on here? For those of you watching Dr. Thunder, you may notice him surrounded by every instrument known to man and every piece of technology known to man. When he got his doctorate, I was so happy because I'm like, I've been talking to him about, I mean, I've been talking to you about it for years before the point. It was like, there's no reason why you shouldn't get your doctorate. And I was kind of like egging you on, say, because I got my doctorate before you, like, come on, man, I outrank you. What's going on? So when you actually, finally, got the time to complete it, I was like, I'm super proud. But, my mind goes a little left of center. Here's where most people think, I go over here. So I want to find a unique way to celebrate this relationship. And I did right from the beginning, you're probably going to call yourself Dr. Thunder. So coincidentally, there happens to be this beverage, which you can find at a Walmart and Sam's Club, which is made by those guys called Dr. Thunder. And there's Dr. Thunder Regular, there's Dr. Thunder Light, there's Dr. Thunder Diet, there's all this stuff. So my plan initially was to say, this soda, I'm going to get like a pallet full of Dr. Thunder. And I meant a full pallet because you could get like one 12-pack of Dr. Thunder soda for like $1.99. I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. It's low cost, and I can have this. This stuff will be in there for months, and it's just going to be reminding him, how much I truly care. But there was a problem. The problem was, it's like, okay, so I was out in San Jose at the time. And I was like, I knew I was going to make a trip back, sometime in the near future. But San Jose, like, there was like pallets worth of this stuff. I get back to Columbus, and I go on the bid to get all of this Dr. Thunder soda. And there's none in Columbus. And I'm like, What the hell? So I have to go online and I have to go ordering, Dr. Thunder from all kinds of places, and none of it was coming in time before I left. So I'm like, okay, screw this. I'm getting in my car. I'm driving around to every Walmart that I can, and I'm buying as many cans of Dr. Thunder as I could. So there's the one day where I'm just up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Right, I'm up, I'm rolling, I'm in the car, and I'm driving around. Just okay, Walmart on the east side. How much Dr. Thunder do you have? Oh, we don't have any. Okay, driver. Walmart in suburb around where Dr. Thunder lives. Do you have any Dr. Thunder? How do you not have this? Right? 4 hours later, I make the rounds around town, and I finally got enough Dr. Thunder, not as much as I wanted to have, but enough to make a stink. So I make all the arrangements. First, I reached out to Lori, who was just like, hey, reach out to the guys up at OSU, reached out to them. They're like, yeah, sure, we can help make that happen. I drive up to OSU that day.
So Pete Mills, he told me that he was somehow involved with this.
Oh yeah. So when I told Pete that I was going to do this, right? The Tuesday before, I went out to the jam session, and he was like, "Take my money." I'm like, "No, dude, I don't need your money." He's like, "No, I want to be part of this."
Oh my goodness!
Pete, right? So I'm like, so I've got my money, and I've got like, Pete's $5, which again is going to buy a substantial amount of Dr. Thunder.
Yes.
Drive around, I get the stuff, I get it into the car, I get it into OSU, I grab my little wheelie cart, I have to make 2 trips in to get it all set up, but man, and then after, made that video and got it posted.
Oh my goodness. And of course my wife did a great job of not, telling me anything, so I was totally surprised. And then, by the way, I love you too, man. So, there's no other explanation for all of that, all the effort that went into that. But I got this email.
Got curtains or anything.
Man, I got this email here. Let's see here. Okay, yes, here it is. I got an email from someone, and this email came in. Okay, so it would have been after midnight or earlier today. And when I started reading this, I was like, this has got to be a joke. And I'm trying to, is this a joke? Is this real? So message. Okay, so here's the message. It says, "Hello, Dr. Wallace. It and the English is not perfect. Okay, so it would like to congratulate you on your product, Dr. Thunder." Okay. Okay. I am Link BG forward. I think they meant to write, I am looking forward to enjoying your soda. I see I able to purchase Dr. Thunder at Walmart. You also play the saxophone incredibly. I have seen you online at Living Word Christian Center, which is not a church I think I've ever played at, but it's sort of a mash of maybe words from different churches that I've played at.
Yeah.
For the Father's Day service, blessings to you. I'm not going to say their name, but thank you. By the way, if you're watching, thank you for the email. I am going to tell you that Dr. Thunder existed prior to me becoming Dr. Thunder, and it actually has nothing to do with me. But I just thought it was a kind of a interesting, and obviously Dr. Keith thought it was funny to make the connection between us, the
Oh
product
my
and
God.
the person. So
I wish I pulled that as a prank on you. I do. Oh my God, that's so good.
oh,
Oh,
it's I still haven't told my wife that. My wife will roll when I if I tell her that.
oh, there's been we have had depending on how you look at it, we have had both the fortune and misfortune of being confused for each other several different times.
Well, we all look the same, so.
Yeah. So, since you mentioned that one, I'll get into the two,
Hmm.
which are probably the ones which jump out at me at the most. Was the was when there were years ago at Ohio State when I don't know if I was no, I was working on the doctorate at the time, and it was maybe 2009, 2010. They were looking for a new head for the School of Music, right? Having candidates who were coming in and interviewing. Now, I don't know how they described you to this particular candidate. I don't even remember his name. But he was a little Beethoven looking like dude. And when I say Beethoven, I mean he literally looked like he was a 4'9" Beethoven. Like you put him next to a garden gnome with a conducting stick, and then you get ready for the symphony. Um, but I come out of a saxophone lesson with Professor Hill, and I come down to the first floor, and I'm walking around, and I see this guy come in. I see him. He comes in, and he comes in with the escort from School Music, and the guy looks at me, large black man with saxophone, and just says, "Professor Wallace," and I am just pissed like a mug. Wait, do people curse on this podcast or no? Okay, you're laughing uncomfortably. I'm gonna go with no. So I'm just like, nah, dude, you are not getting this job. And I look at him and I say, no, I'm not Professor Wallace. You want the other Negro. And I said that loud enough so that the entire office, could hear, so that we knew, like, okay, nah, because that ain't happening, right? It just it's like, come on, man.
Okay,
Oh,
tell
okay.
us the other story. Tell us the other story.
So this leads to the second story. And this one is not so pleasant until it gets to the end, but at the end, there is a glorious ending. Go to there's a woodwind recital. Like we've got these, like, all they had all like the different sections. Like when you have like woodwinds are in what do they call those things still now? When they have like these weekly recitals, like woodwinds are one group, brass are another group, percussion. How are they all spread across the university?
Well, there's like studio classes. Is
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like studio recitals. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. So this was a studio recital in which I saw something that was so incredibly racist. I was absolutely fuming. And what it was a performance in which there was a clarinetist who was dressed head to toe as a Native American, right? And then next to him was a professor doing the snake oil salesman bit. Yeah, yeah. I won't get into all of it, but I had videotaped it in case I needed this for, whatever retaliation was going to come back when I said something. It got so bad that in one point, and okay, this is going to be horribly, horribly insensitive, horribly racist. There's no other way for me to do this except for the actual performance of what he did. The guy he's playing this. He's going on about how the Native American and all of his magical powers and this elixir will do it. And he at one point drinks the elixir, falls to the ground like he's dying, and then he says, "How, how, how," and I was just like, no effing way. I get up and I just storm out of this, right? At the
yeah.
same time, one of the other professors, who I won't mention here, had also walked out, and the poor guy had to hear my rant. as we were walking out and we're walking across the oval, and he's just going, I know. And I'm like, you know what? Nah, we're not having this today. So I walked back to that recital, and right at the end of it, this bassoon group had just finished up, right? And I waited for the last note, and I walk out on stage. I'm like, did you guys finish? I said, great. My saxophone professor, Professor Hill, is sitting in the front row with the stage reporter, and he sees me come out, and I'm like, and he just looks like, oh no, what's about to happen? And I get up there, the audience is starting to leave, the performance is done. I'm like, and I say very clearly, excuse me, everyone, my name is Keith Newton. My name is Keith Newton. I say this very loud, and I want to make sure that I say this clearly. I cannot believe that we as an audience applauded for something earlier today that was so incredibly racist, right? This is where this starts. He's sitting there and he's just like, okay, I know he's just waiting for this to be over. The woodwind faculty are sitting in the back waiting for this thing to be over. The students are sitting there going, what the hell is happening? I go on a 2-minute spiel to talk about how incredibly horrible it was, how racist it was, how we should never have this thing happening again, that I couldn't believe this thing was approved. And then at the end I say, if you have any questions or commentary that you'd like to share, again, my name is Keith Newton. My email address is human resources, right? My name, human resources at OSU, right? Because that's where I was working at the time, right? So I give that, I say my name so many times. I think certainly this is going to come back to me, at some point later on, and I will have this conversation that will happen, sometime in the School of Music. So a few hours pass by, and then I'm driving, and I get a phone call, and I'm like, it's Sean Wallace. Okay. And I pick up the phone. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? He's like, and you say the following words. You said, hey, were you at the Woodwind
studio
recital today? I said, yes, I was. He said, okay, I just want to read something to you. And I said, okay, I'm expecting, here it comes. Here, like, all the things going on. And then you said the following. I'm going to read this. Dear Professor Wallace, thank you for standing up for the minority students at the Woodwind recital.
I like how you repeated several times what your name was, and how the person still conflated us.
Oh yeah, but remember I don't know the tail. Okay, I don't know if we can talk about the tail end of this, because there's a funny afternote that you had mentioned in one of our conversations about the vote for tenure. Do you remember that?
I don't.
Okay, then we won't talk about it. I won't.
I don't remember exactly, but I mean, it doesn't matter. I have tenure.
Okay, well then I'll go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead. You're like, when we're talking about tenure, he's like, you said at one point to me when we were in one of our lessons or something, you said, there were a couple of people who voted against me, for having tenure. I wonder if that had to do with the speech that I gave at the Woodwind.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
That's funny, man.
Some days all you can do is laugh, man.
So let's back up a little bit to when we met and are working together. And then we can talk about the book, which is kind of an interesting story because both you and Steve Cortica,
right,
who I interviewed, you were both studying with me at the time, and you both, like within a week of each other, came to me and said almost the identical words, exact words, which was a sort of a confirmation of something that I had been considering. For a while, but let's back up and talk about how we met. I'm trying to. I don't remember exactly when we did meet. I think we met at Ohio State. Maybe Dr. McDaniel introduced us, or
Yeah, I know it was before that, but I don't have an exact recollection of our first meeting either.
okay,
I have an exact recollection of the first time that we played together, which was on the the
Cab
Cab
Calloway.
Calloway. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was for some reason I was in the lead tenor chair, and you were playing the second one, and
Oh yeah,
then
right.
yeah, 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 right. Which was inexplicable because I had already known like your reputation, right? So, and I think I had already even heard you at some point on video or something else, right? And I remember on that gig, like because it came up, you knew the tune, the fastest song ever written, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Which is, I mean, 350 is like the minimum of where they take it, and I'm like, wait, I got to play this, and this guy is right next to me. And I'm like, but I'm like, well, I'm in the chair. I got to do it. So I do the thing. I mean, I did well. I did functional. The audience, was fine.
No, you sounded great. No, you sounded great. I mean, you sounded great. And that's a fun. It's a fun book. It's a fun gig. There's a lot of blowing in the tenor one.
Yeah. But I'm like, I was more than happy when, he called you to do, like, to do that book and to do more of those solos. I'm like, you know what? That's all you, my friend.
Yeah. Well, and I do remember that, and then it seems like maybe Dr. McDaniel, we had a meeting or something, and we talked about the degree program that you wanted to do, and then we were off to the races.
Yeah, no, I think there was something before that because you weren't involved in the, no, you weren't involved with my doctorate initially, right? Because I had started off,
Mm-mm.
no, because I had started off going through the musicology program.
Right.
Yeah, and then, after 2 years in there, they said I had to redo a master's in 2 years. After that, I was just like, this is crazy. This doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
But I had still been like, while the time I was doing that, I was like, still with Dr. McDaniel, I was like, I'm going to play in your band, so
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and do that and help him out, and also that'll get me my ensemble credit, all of those lovely things. So I
Yeah.
mean, I know we had proximity, and we would run into each other.
Right. That's right. That's right.
But once which was helpful because when I came to you with the proposal, and I said the proposal for my doctoral program, which was a thing that I wrote myself, right? I mean, you're always like so straight and just get gracious and yourself like, yeah, I'm in. That was your response, right? There was like no
Oh,
like super detailed, like,
yeah. Mm-mm.
hey, we should think about blah 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 blah. It was just like, no, love the idea, man, support it, right?
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of fun in our lessons and our interactions, and I think, and Steve Cortica was there like the same year you were studying with me,
Right.
and then just like within a week of each other, you both came in my office and you said, "Hey, man, you got to do a book, and I'll help you in any way I can." And I mean, that was what it was, and so. And the way that story goes is for about 6 years of of meetings, much of the time once a week, and then when Steve moved to New York, then
Yeah.
we were doing that, and then towards the end, we brought in Chris Johnson,
Right.
and so it was a really it was a good experience. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it. It was great working with you all, and I think I think it speaks for itself. And and it's basically a collection of materials that I had been teaching in my studio and in the improvisation sequence.
Yeah. Do you remember what? I don't know if you'll remember what the impetus was that got both Steve and I, both thinking in that same direction.
Mm.
So so you'll enjoy this. Both when Steve and I started, like when I officially started the doctorate, when Steve was officially studying with you, I think I had done a little bit of studying with you prior, just like
Mm.
lessons here and there, and then I'd also one of the other things was that there are some other roles that had been opening up when you were particularly getting little bits of funding, like when you were looking for a composition teacher, right, which ended up becoming a composition, trumpet role. For a while within jazz when you guys had Kenyatta, so been
Hmm.
interacting and applying, to be faculty. But anyway, I digress. When we were both really, hitting classes, we were both in your improvisation course, right? And both of us really naively thought that it's an improvisation course. We've been doing this, right? Steve has had significant experience and was already a great player. I had significant experience and it was just like I'd already been, teasing stuff. And it's like, we're going to come in and it's going to be cool, right? And so we were like, we're not going to bring saxophones. We're going to bring our secondary instruments, right? So I brought a flute. He brought in a clarinet, right? And then promptly we got our asses kicked. I mean, we just got our asses kicked by the material, right? Because it was good, right? Because I showed up with a flute and I couldn't even, right? And I'm going through, and because you just had the stuff that was just moving, and it was all of this muscle building that we hadn't done. Like we had all developed strengths here and there, but we didn't have these things which were like part of the core facility and core understandings that were really coming out of that class. And like after 2 tries on secondary instruments, neither of us could hack it. Right? We had to go back. I'm just being honest, right? Right? I mean, it's eighth notes from 120, right? You wouldn't think it would be that challenging, but what it was really, it was like you're paying attention to the chords, you're paying attention to the scales, and you were doing all of this in real time, and we just did not have the chops to handle on our secondary instruments. As we were watching you all the while walking like, yeah, today I'm going to walk in with a flute. Today I'm coming in with a clarinet. Today I'm coming in with a saxophone. Today, yeah, it's going to be piccolo, right? So after getting our butts kicked and then having to really put in serious time, I think that's what both kind of kicked into our heads independently. You ought to really put this in a book, man. You ought to put this together, right? Because the thing that came out of it, it's there are all these jazz books out there, but this one is particular. I mean, it's just the hardcore, putting in the reps, man, and just getting the stuff together so that you know which scales, which patterns, how to actually apply things and how to actually leverage them across the spectrum. It was an eye-opening and a very brutal experience that led us to an even more eye-opening and really brutal experience in terms of talking about it, and
Hmm.
talking about how we were going to put the concepts and make it more universally understood by everybody. But
Hmm.
you never grow unless you take on these things. And it was great. And one of the things that was really fulfilling for me was that I got to help you fulfill one of your dreams, which was, to get a book done. Because I was just like, why don't you have a book done, right? It was the same thing like with the doctorate. There was no reason, right? So, and I say this patting myself on the back, but really saying, it's just it's great when you can help somebody who is doing something and believes in their stuff to be able to help meet that goal, right? Because it's part of everything that we do.
One thing about the book that I think makes it different, and really the team that we had was the right team to be able to facilitate this. I trust that you've enjoyed the video so far. Please subscribe, comment, share, like, And also, you can go over to my Patreon. The link is in the description if you'd like to further support. Thank you. Now, back to the video. Facilitate this is the systematic nature of the book.
Yeah.
It is very logical, and one chapter seems like it leads to the next chapter, and with the kinds of instructions and encouraging words, uh, mostly provided by Dr. Keith Newton, uh, very helpful, in keeping the threading through. And of course, you took on the primer chapter, and I think it's very complete and does a good job of getting people all the information that they need to be able to get to the next chapter in where the improvising actually starts. So, anyhow, enough about the book, but it was one of the reasons why
I am going to mention that I still am mad that you did not call the book The Thunder in You. That was supposed to be the title, man. And I don't care. Our publisher, Hal Leonard, that should have been the title, man. I mean, How to Improvise Over Chord Changes, right? It's a great title. But The Thunder in You, that's branding. Where else would you see the Thunder branding anywhere else?
Praise the Lord. So, I was thinking about, okay, so we went through kind of how we met, and we talked about the book, and I want to ask you some questions about, one thing about your playing that is unusual is your range, your altissimo range and fluidity. So how did you develop that, and who were influences that even made you want to develop that?
There are a couple of layers to this, but I will tell you that the very first reason that happened was out of pure laziness. It was because of there were whiles when in my early gigging years as a saxophonist, and flutist, that I was like playing with like a lot of R&B bands and and like contemporary like smooth jazz ensembles, and there were times where I'd have to bring like 3 or 4 instruments to a gig, like bring a soprano, bring an alto, bring a tenor, bring the flute, and I was just like, and there were things where I was like, I was playing on tenor where I'm just like, it's just a little bit higher. Why do I need to bring an alto? I don't want to bring another, instrument that costs thousands of dollars to, a $50 gig or a $100 gig. So half of this, so my very first, kind of jumps into the altissimo and working that area to try to be more fluid. Were just out of the fact that like I didn't want to carry extra horns. So first I got rid of the alto, and then eventually I didn't even bring the soprano anymore, because I'm like, okay, I can do this up an octave, and I can make it sound just every bit as natural as when I'm in a lower octave. I only need to bring the soprano if I'm looking for a certain voice on that instrument. And that's also the thing that kind of got me to start to treat them, even though they're all saxophones, to really start to treat them individually. Like I use a soprano specifically for this and specifically this voice, and I play it a certain way that way. And an alto specifically for this voice and play it certain that way. And a tenor, which is my favorite among them, which gives me literally the most range. That's a lot of where that happened. The second thing that helped me develop the altissimo range that I have, kind of comparable to Lenny Bickett was it didn't even, part of it happened accidentally. And it was when I was going through a good amount of time with synthetic reeds, and having challenges on the mouthpiece and playing in these really loud rock and R&B bands, right? I mean, where like guitarist is cranked up to 11, the bass player is cranked up, much louder than he is. The keyboards are here. Only the voices go on the monitors and the saxophone and the horns. It's just like good luck to you. Somehow you have to be loud enough. And so I had kind of just like an athlete, I was developing, my breathing to be able to be strong enough to be able to, compete with that volume and also cut through the noise. And I hadn't realized how hard I was blowing until one day I was playing a gig at a little tavern, and my last synthetic reed, I was blowing so hard, I split it in half, like right down the middle, and I didn't have any reeds, right? And so this is when I already had a pretty significant range up to like a 2-octave like G and stuff above, right? So,
Mm.
right. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do because I have no more reeds. I can't play. The gig is still going. I turn around and I see Joe Crump, who is this fantastic saxophone player, in Columbus, Ohio, where I used to live, and I see him walking down the street, and I'm like, Joe, and he's like, and I wave him into the bar, and I'm like, Joe, help me. I'm out of reeds, man. I just blew through my last reed, and I don't know what I'm gonna do, man. He's just like, well, I got some cane. I'm like, fine, give me a cane reed. I don't care, whatever. So he goes back and he gets me, just walks back to his car, grabs like a Van Doren 2.5 or 3. No, I think it was a 3. I think it was a 3. Yeah. So I grab it, I put it on, and I blow, and I'm an octave above where I was trying to hit. About the only thing I can compare it to is like, imagine like if you were like going to do a jump and you're like, okay, yeah, 1, 2, 3, and you jump expecting that you're only going to get 6 inches off the ground, and you go
Well,
about.
it's like leg weights. It's like you jump in with leg weights on, you take the leg weights off, and you're like, oh snap, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
No.
and it was like I was reaching stuff, and I was like, "What the hell?" And the trombone player looks at me like, "What the hell?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess I got to work on this now."
Yeah. So that is one thing about some of the synthetics. I think you were playing on fiber cells.
I was on fiber cells at the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I
I'm
still
scared.
play on. I'm playing on fiber cells for tenor and alto for all of the jazz and commercial stuff.
Hmm.
And then on alto, I'm playing Leger signature for the classical stuff. Soprano, I always play Leger signature.
Yeah,
Clarinet, Leger signature. Bass clarinet, Leger signature.
right.
Barry sax, I'm playing on Fibercell. But one thing that that I've heard and noticed about the fiber cells is you tend to lose a little bit of range.
Hmm.
And so that's an interesting thing. So after you have sort of done the work to get the range, significant range with the fiber cell, and then put a real read on, that's interesting. I'll have to try that.
Well, dude, I mean, here's the interesting part right now is that well, not the interesting part, the challenging part right now is that I am working to reestablish that range. And this is due to a combination of some health issues and things that I had to change on the saxophone in order to still be able to see. Which goes into like some of the vision loss that had happened. But I'm trying not to increase intraocular pressure. So
Right.
that's why I had to like change setups. Because
Mm-hmm.
I like being able to see more than I do like being able to play a saxophone. Although I love playing a saxophone, but
Mm-hmm.
but in the I mean, there's so much athletic training that went into that, not only to like reach those levels, which first I reached accidentally, but then to maintain over time, to continue to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and then to sustain that you have to keep doing, otherwise you do lose it. And I had gotten to a point where I had dropped down and I had lost the octave again. And I'm working my way back up to, the back. I'm back up in the Pickett sphere, but I'm not yet to scaring Arturo. So, you know, which is where I was at my peak, right? I mean, I'm like reaching, the ridiculously high C, the C above that, and now you're starting to play notes above that, and people are going like, I can't hear anything. Meanwhile, all the dogs in the neighborhood are screaming.
Yeah. So you could lose an octave from that and still be playing higher than most everybody. Um, so
Oh
talk
my
to us
God, I
about.
forgot. I forgot.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
I got to share this story. So for a while, I was working out of where the hell was I? Sacramento, California. And I was working there doing an IT gig, but there was as I was looking around for places to play, I ran into this really groovy jam session at a little cafe where there was this really great sax player going over to Eastman. His name's Levy. I can't remember what his last name is, but we'll go to Levy. He was great. He played saxophone and he played bass, and he had some of the most genius lines. But he also had a group called Tenor Explosion, where he would invite others like saxophonists to come in, and just kind of sit in and just be like this whole like horn line and just a rhythm section, which was really cool. Well, one day he decided that he was going to do like a tenor explosion and have like 20 saxophones all lined up on stage to play. So he had us all come in. We're all like doing songs. Of course, everybody's playing louder, higher, faster to be able to be heard. And the one tune that I'm supposed to play on, I'm supposed to come on and play on like "Isn't She Lovely," like a Stevie Wonder thing. So I come in, so I start to play, and I'm like, I'm getting drowned out by all these saxophones, right? I'm like not being heard. I'm like, well, what am I going to do to make sure that I'm actually heard? So, we get to, playing the melody going out, and I just decide, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and take this like 3 octaves up. So, so everybody's just playing the da-na-na-na-na, and I just go up to the screamosphere, right? And I'm just playing it, and Levy just looks at me like, no, you're not seriously doing this. You're not seriously doing this. But I'm still like nailing all the notes. And so all he can do is just like laugh, because I'm like, this thing is not supposed to happen on the saxophone, right? That's supposed to be like, you do that on a trumpet for a note or two. Like you don't do this whole thing melodically, but um, there are a few more guys who are doing that now. Like they got some videos and stuff online where they're just like they're up in the Pickett sphere and they're controlling that stuff. It's just amazing.
The player that I first heard when I was growing up that made me want to develop a lot of control up in the altissimo range
Mhm.
is Paquito de
Oh
Rivera,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and his playing, he is one of the more unusual players up in that range, because with a lot of players you can kind of hear the fingerings, so to
Hmm.
speak, but with his playing it's just he's nailing all the notes and stuff, but it's as if the fingerings are sort of accessory, you know,
Yeah,
because of the pureness and the sound. Um,
yeah. That's
uh,
Paquito, man. I mean, and also the really wonderfully unique way that he plays the instrument so percussively.
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Where he's just like, nailing in there. And it's just like, I
Hmm.
used to think that was almost completely original to him. And then, who I didn't notice until like a few years ago, who also did that, and has always done that, Gerald Albright,
Mm.
right? Like, I mean, he plays the saxophone almost like he's playing a drum set with a melody, right? I mean, and he's nailing every rhythm, and he can nail all the stuff in the altissimo register exactly for where he is too. I mean, significant stuff too. But I mean, both those guys use that approach, and it's just magical. You don't hear the fingerings. You're absolutely right.
And of course, you don't hear as many. I mean, you hear some alto players that have altissimo range because especially if you're thinking more kind of pop commercial saxophone, there's a lot of there's a lot of altissimo playing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like a prerequisite for playing that style well. And but there are more tenor players that actually have a more developed, and extended altissimo range, and it
Mhm.
seems to be for a couple of reasons. One reason is because even if the pitch of the instrument, if the instrument is bigger, you can play lower notes, but there's actually still no limit on the upper side.
Right.
You still don't have a limit on the upper side. So it's not like if I play alto, yeah, of course I can't play the lower notes, but because it's alto, I can play way higher than somebody on tenor. No, it's actually not the case. I
Right.
mean, you'll need some different fingerings or whatever once you get up to a certain range, but then that's sort of negotiable too, because once you get so high, the harmonic series for all of the different fundamentals are so close together that you can
Right.
kind of, you know, again, it's about more about voicing than it is about fingerings, you know.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's a
I agree with you. I used to when people would ask me about how to do it, I'm just like say, look, dude, you can do it. Anybody can do it. Everything is low B flat, right? So,
mm,
yeah, everything is low B flat. The same way you play a low B flat is the same way that you're going to play, the ridiculously high C or the ridiculously high G all the way up. It's just gonna
no.
you're increasing the airspeed and you've got the control to hold stuff in place.
Now I am going to say because I've heard you say that before,
Yeah.
and the thing about anybody can do it thing, and there's obviously something different about you physiologically that facilitates being able to play in that range the way that you're able to play in that range. I mean,
And I'm
everybody's.
more handsome. Yes, I admit it. I'm the
Yeah,
I am the better looking one. It's definitely handsome me.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It could be something about the shape of your mouth. I mean, it's like the thing where like there's some trumpet players that it's like they just the way that their teeth are shaped. It just facilitates being able to produce more airspeed with less effort. And I don't know that I mean I've practiced a lot of altissimo stuff, and I have I can play higher than anybody wants to hear me play, but but I don't have the range that you have, and I don't know that I'd ever be able to develop that range, because I think that you get to a certain point with it, because I think you could take anybody's mouthpiece and slap it on and still be able to play, that range, because there's something else. It's not just about the concept. There's something that's facilitating the concept that you have for playing that altissimo range. So anyhow, it's tremendous. So that's something unusual. Okay, so let's back up. I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about you know the beginnings of Keith Newton. When did you first get exposed to music? What made you want to pursue music? And I also want to talk about some of your other interests in some of the technology chops that you have that have facilitated much of the other things that you do. So let's talk about music first, and then maybe you
Okay.
can start talking about some of the other stuff.
Sure. Well, I guess for me, I didn't have a grand entrance into music. I just kind of I got there through, the usual paths. The first thing was my mom wanted me to take piano lessons when I was a kid. Hated it. Not just because and I kind of regret to this day now that I don't play better piano, which is something that I've actually been working on lately. But started with piano lessons, and eventually, when I got to like a middle school band, there was an opportunity to like, play an instrument. And I chose saxophone because saxophone looked cool and I thought I could get girls with it. Right? That
Hey,
was,
hey, hey! There's never been a more pure reason.
yeah.
Never been a more pure reason. Hey, that's just right down the middle. Go ahead. Go
That's
ahead.
right.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and I've been fortunate enough that even in, I think the fact that I wasn't part of like any like made like big like marching bands and big school programs kind of gave some of the attention that I needed in order to like kind of decide that this was going to be my career path. Like I went to an all boys high school where instrumentation for the band was severely lacking. So that's when I got my
Mm,
first experience on doubling on instruments when I started like learning to play flute. When I decided to go into music as a career, meaning like I was going to do it through college, um, I did it because it was the only thing that I thought I did well. And I didn't know how to get into the other things that I was thinking about, like television and radio and entertainment. And my mom was very big on, you need to get a job. At some point, you were getting out of the house, and I'm not taking care of you. You're not coming back, right? So there was a lot of that. And once I had some very good guidance along the way from high school music teachers to some experiences when I was in high school starting to deal with like the college outreach programs. Like there was one at Capital University where I went to get my undergraduate, where I had a director by the name of Tim Swinehart, who's unfortunately deceased now, who was one of my biggest influences. And
mm,
it got me into, like I auditioned to play in this wind ensemble on tenor, and instead, he put me on baritone saxophone, which made my high school band director, not happy, and I wasn't happy with it initially, but it gave me one of the greatest things in retrospect that could have ever happened to me. I was just sitting back playing the whole notes most of the night, which gave me a real opportunity to listen and to hear everything else that was going on. So by the
mm.
time that I got into ensembles in college and stuff, like I didn't know how to improvise. I didn't know how to look at a B flat seven and match scales, right? But I could hear stuff, right? And I
Hmm.
could hear what chords are being played by the piano, and I could hear what's being played by the guitar, and I could put all of that together, and I could kind of like use that to help me through while I was working on the other stuff. I went in as a music. I studied to be a music teacher, and when I got out, even though I spent a lot of time performing, I started by teaching in public school as a middle school band director. Then moved into a program where I was teaching kids who wanted to be professional musicians, and I literally went from kids, this is a whole note, this is a half note, to all right, now we're talking about music business theory, I'm sorry, music business, music theory. I'm getting sponsorships from software. I'm not software, but soft drink vendors and from the community college, so that I can bring in artists, to work with the kids and do stuff like that. And then at some point after that, I had been talking about technology so much that I had moved into technology kind of as a space where I was going to do more of my kind of day job work, and then continued both writing and playing music, in different ensembles, which all like got really, really close and annoyingly close to going somewhere nationally, and then just falling off at the last minute.
Mm.
So, there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, okay, we're getting there, we're getting there, we're getting there. No, we're not. We're getting there, we're getting there, getting there. No, we're not. It's just kind of how, life works out. Nowadays, I don't rush off to do a lot of gigs anymore. I spend a lot of time practicing, which is cool. And I spend a lot of time in composition, to
Mhm.
work on the stuff that I'm trying to work on for like film and television. But, and then really using this time during quarantine to really focus on the things which are going to make my mind happy and my ear happy, and starting to really just dive in depth with all of the different ways that I can approach chords and scales in terms of getting the particular sounds and leveraging the tensions and releases that I want. So that's kind of where I am usefully. I think I answered
So,
the question. I hope I did.
so music is therapeutic. Is it therapeutic for you?
Some days it can be. Other days it's a real challenge. So one example when it was therapeutic was when like that teacher I mentioned, Tim Swiner, he had died suddenly of a cancer, this was maybe a decade or so ago, and I didn't know he was sick, and I had stayed out of touch with him because I was just like, you know what, I said. He's one of the guys who's so important to me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to call you each week. I'm going to call you when I've made it. Right? You know that thing. I'm like, all right,
Mm,
look, when I'm not going to keep pestering you about my little day jobs or my little gigs here and there. I want you there at the table when I absolutely make it. Like when I am at the pie in the sky, the pinnacle, and like I've got all of this career success, I want you there to celebrate because you made it there with me. And I had found out on a Saturday that he was sick. Didn't get information to call about him being sick until a Monday. And when I called on that Monday, he had already died. Right?
uh,
Yeah, I was completely devastated. I didn't realize how devastated I was until I knew that I had to get inside a room in front of a computer and I had to write music, to express how much I
mm,
love this man in my life, right? I had to go through the whole process of not only writing it, I had to hire singers to come in and do the stuff. I had to do these, I had to absolutely correct this, I had to play this, for, key people in my life, that kind of thing. But that was the only way that I was going to get through his death because he meant that much to me. Um,
mm.
and that's probably the biggest example of where music was therapeutic. Um, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. There's something metaphysical, transcendental. You know, uh,
Yeah.
there's just something about music that just does that. And music has this incredible way of making these connections with people. I've said this several times in these interviews, but it's an idea that just keeps coming back. And I can't think of another career where I would have made so many instantaneous friends.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you play like two tunes together, and there's a connection there. And
Yeah.
you play a gig one time with somebody 5 years ago,
Hmm.
you see them again, and it's like, it's still there. It's just an amazing thing. So, and undeniably, obviously, it's the music that is creating that connection that has that power to do that. And one thing about music that is tremendous is how if you let it, it can make you a better listener.
Hmm.
It can make you a better communicator.
Yep.
You know, with the way that especially our national politics are, it is very rare that you see people actually listening, actually taking in information, and then changing what it was that they planned to say to actually incorporate what the conversation actually is about, and not sort of just standing their ground and saying whatever their talking points, and no information has transferred. Nobody knows anything more in one ear and out the other ear.
Yeah.
But in music, it gives us this opportunity to really listen and to absorb and take in what's going on, and then to try to incorporate that into our response and the way that we're communicating. I mean, one of the built-in ways that we have to be listening is if you're going to play chord changes. The rhythm section is playing a certain chordal structure, and you have to be aware and be listening to what's going on, or else you can't. It's not possible to play anything that's appropriate. you
So
know?
yeah, and you raised so many interesting points. I'm going to actually raise a little bit of the counter to that because we all know the guys who show up on the gig, right?
Mhm.
The tune comes up and then they just start playing, right? And they're
Oh
not
yeah, right.
hearing, right, what the rhythm section says. And the thing I always like to say to people is just like, if you just listen to the rhythm section, they will tell you exactly what to play, right?
Yeah.
They will not let you down. They'll let you know exactly what time. They'll let you know exactly where to play it. They'll let you know exactly, what you need to do, when you need to stop, right? And
Hmm.
you to your point, we've got this opportunity to have these incredible open communications. And
Hmm.
it's like, just like the conversation that we're having now, which, has been, again, facilitated through, our musical connection, leading to,
Yeah.
collegiality and friendship. Um, it, it's provided us, it still serves as a foundation for us to be open and to hear what the other person is trying to say and not respond simply to respond, but to listen, to engage, right? In improvisation, like stage improvisation, the other thing that I do, and kind of like the dramatic arts, the stuff like you see on Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Right, right.
Right, that kind of stuff, right? They call it this concept of yes and, right? When you show up, no matter what somebody says on the stage, you're supposed to yes and it. So like if you and I are on the stage and you say to me, man, this coffee house is fantastic. And I say to you, no, this isn't a coffee house, this is a bar, right? I've just shut down the idea. But if you say to me, man, this is a exciting coffee house, and I say, yeah, man, and it's nice that all the people working here are topless, right? Right? I've just kind of like upped the ante, right? One, I've said something ridiculous to kind of carry the story along, but more to the
Hmm.
point, I've engaged with you on the level to say, hey, I'm communicating
Yes.
and I want to build this story with you, which is the same. That's like how all the great improvisations in music have also happened.
So one thing that I say to my students frequently is I I equate poor music making and poor improvising with poor listening as far as language, in those situations where people, just like I said before, like they have their talking points, but they're not really listening to each other.
Yeah.
And I like to use this analogy about counseling, especially like marriage counseling or relationship counseling, where, so, say you have Tom and Susie,
Hmm.
and the counselor turns to Susie and says, okay, why don't you tell Tom what's going on and how what's going on makes you feel? And she describes, oh, it's Sunday and all you do is watch football and you just watch that 65-inch, 4K UHD. Uh,
Now you're just talking about the dream television that you
right,
want to
right,
buy.
right, right.
The team like, hey, Lori, I'm going to go buy myself a TV.
uh, uh, but you don't really pay attention. You're just focused on other things, and it just really hurts my feelings. And then the counselor turns to Tom and says, "Okay, repeat back what she just said."
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Now, in most situations, or in a lot of situations where there's poor communication, the guy or the girl is not capable of actually verbatim repeating back, because the meaning often is in the exact nuance associated with the delivery, right? So if I put pauses in places that there were no pauses, or if I'm rolling my eyes as I'm saying it,
yeah,
it communicates something differently. But often the case would be is that there would be a lack of an ability to repeat exactly and only broken paraphrase of what actually transpired, which the meaning is totally not there.
yeah. Hmm.
And so what I like to say is that communication, the prerequisite to communication, is 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 the ability to repeat exactly what was just said. And that's a common thing in music, right? So I mean, we transcribe, we do all these things, but also if you take a solo before me and you at the end of your solo you play this line that's really hip.
Uh-huh.
Now, I can just let that lay there and just play what I was going to play anyway, or I can take that thing that you just played, which shows that I'm paying attention and I'm listening to you. And it also shows that I value what you think. I value your ideas, your thoughts, to the extent that I will use my energy and to take that thing and to modify it and to take it and play it different ways in my solo. So it actually shows that I value your information. I see your ideas as being something important, something that can actually improve something about the way that I'm perceiving, reality or whatever. And that's where I think that, the great music is made, is when people are really listening and they're borrowing from each other. And it's like what you just said, yes and.
Right, right.
Right. That's exactly what that is. I
That
just
is
borrowed what
exactly.
you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's yeah, we could go a lot of places with that, but that's very cool. What does your practice routine look like? Talk to me about what your practice
Oh
routine looks like.
gosh. Well, right now it is primarily on flute. I actually haven't picked up a saxophone for regularly for about a month. I picked it up about a week ago just to make sure that I was doing some stuff, but I wanted to make sure, like for like this next month, that I really focused on flute playing.
Yeah, yeah,
Despite the example that you saw earlier. Right. So it's a lot of long tones just to start off. Then it's metronome work, doing triads, just augmented triads, diminished triads, major and minor triads. Doing some scales and doing most of this, just tonguing everything to make sure that I get everything nicely warmed up. And then it's just been working on a few standards. So like I've been working on Stella by Starlight recently,
mm,
and my goal has been to develop at a medium tempo the kind of facility that I feel on saxophone. Whereas I've been paying a lot of attention to the chords and scales in terms of creating the sound that I want to create with the tensions and releases around that tune. But I also really wanted to make sure that I did it on flute, because on saxophone I have more of a tendency to be lazy and to let some of the memory that's already carrying through what I do on the horn, kind of
mm.
carry that path. So it's been a little harder there. And then I've been working on a number of classical etudes, just a couple of quick etudes, just to make sure that I'm really focusing on developing the cleanliness of the technique to
Mm.
get that together, and then improvising then with some recordings to kind of finish off. Just to make sure that I'm not just regimenting myself in, the practicing of patterns, but I'm also forcing myself to work on applying those patterns in real world musical situations.
Yeah, I interviewed Rick Margitza, and he was
Oh,
talk.
he's nuts. He's so great, but he's so nuts. All of
Yeah,
those beautiful concepts he comes up with, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, and you're sort of alluding to this, all of those practice excerpts, things to practice that he's been,
Yeah, yeah,
what is it, 365 days of practice, that's his hashtag.
right.
So that's like totally generous of him to do that, and it's beautiful. And I had a great time interviewing him. He's such a beautiful, like, very gracious and warm. Yeah,
Hmm.
I really got that from him. One thing that he was talking about as far as what he practices, like he said he's got an iPod and he has taken I can't remember what it was, 20 standards or 30 standards or something, and he has taken them and he made them so that they would play in all keys.
Yeah.
So he pitch shifted a bunch of them and then made unique files for each key, and then he has it in a playlist, and all of them in a playlist, and then it's on shuffle play. So then what he does is he presses shuffle.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, he presses play, and whatever starts playing, he's got to play that tune in that key, and and get it happening,
Yeah.
and he'll stay there until he starts to feel comfortable, which I think is like a really interesting way to like incorporate randomization,
Mm-hmm.
in a structured way. It's like to kind of, so that you don't always have to have inspiration. You can find other things that sort of, they'll change by themselves, and it kind of forces you to have to
Right.
react to it. So I thought that was a kind of an interesting thing. As far as like you were talking about, like the regimented thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes what happens is we can kind of get into our routine, and we just get in and we just do the stuff that we know to do, and it could be scales and patterns and whatever,
Right.
and that stuff is helpful and is useful, but sometimes like we can spend more time on that than like actually playing tunes, and it's like,
Right.
dude, like, tunes is where most of the, I mean, I got into the game to play tunes, the scales and everything are important, because if you get that stuff together, it's like a great shortcut to developing, facility and knowledge. But it's all about the music, right? It's all about playing tunes. So
Yeah, but and I'm adjusting an insulin pump, by the way. I'm not ignoring you like playing Pokemon or something. I was doing that earlier, but not now.
right.
But I mean, we all have gotten
Yeah,
to
be
a
like,
point
okay,
where,
now I'm playing Pokemon. Okay.
yes, right.
Right.
So it's like, in fact, if you just stay still right there, there's a Pikachu above your shoulder. I just gotta.
There you go. Right.
But we all get ourselves into these things. It's like, either we hear somebody else or we think something else, and then we think like, man, I got to work on this thing, and then we start, shedding this thing, we start shedding this pattern or this thing, and then we all think, okay, yeah, at some point, I'm going to be able to use this thing somewhere. And then I don't know if this has happened to you, but this has happened to me a bunch of times. So I'm like, I work on this thing, and I'm like, why did I practice this thing? I'm never going to use it. Or I try to force it.
Oh yeah.
I try to force it into somewhere else, and it's just like, why did you do that? That makes no musical sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Totally. And
When I first started to become like a record head, right? When I first started to really, really get into him, I started to get obsessed about some of that stuff, and I was just like, man, it's like, oh man, I'm just gonna play whatever wacky pattern comes in, man, and it's gonna superimpose over the chord changes, and it's gonna sound great. And then I was like, I would hear some of the stuff, and I'd play it, and like people would look at me like, okay, that was decent. And then some guy would come over and play another note, and they're like, yeah, and I'm like, what am I missing? They're like, oh yeah, musicality. Branford talks about that, right? He talks about that where he's just like, he said this was like in an interview like 8 years ago or something when he was about to do a classical concert. He's like, look, the saxophonists today have more technical skills than the saxophonists 60 years ago. Like, I mean, ridiculously more, but a lot of them don't have the musicality, right? Or they forget about the melody, or just are using a tune as a vehicle for improvisation. And it was one of those like eye-opening things like, man, I got to remember, why I picked this thing up, right? Just like you said, to play the tune. You still got to play the tune. You can't just like go and like, la, 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 right? But full disclosure, I've been guilty of that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think all of us, and as we're sort of discovering ourselves and kind of unpacking things.
Mhm.
I mean, one of the beautiful things about music is that you can do it until you die. I mean, there's no end of how long you can do it, right? Well, I guess death is the end.
Yeah.
Um, but
Or coronavirus if you're still doing $50 gigs.
oh, right.
And you're online. Come see my online show, man. You weren't going to pay for me before, but sure, you'll pay for me now. No, no, bro.
Yeah.
Nah, that ain't happening. Just no.
Yeah. But like something like sports, you can do that, until your body gives out, and then you're done. That's it. And yeah, you can sort of modulate into different aspects of sports, like, okay, I'm going to be a coach now, and okay, and then okay, now I want to be a general manager. I mean, you can do that and kind of reinvent yourself. But as far as being directly related to, actually playing the game,
Right.
as a musician, you can just keep doing it. And so one of the beautiful things is that learning stuff from other people, ripping stuff off, repackaging things, learning things and just making mistakes with it so that you can figure out how it works.
Yeah.
That's part of sort of the unending process of learning is when you learn something new, you have to use it in the wrong context because that provides the information for the right context. I mean, well, I know I don't play it there now, so okay, here it is.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
I
but
gotta admit though, I mean, maybe I'm too much of a perfectionist, and I know you've talked about this before, and we've had this conversation before, but man, I just like, I want to, when I get out on the bandstand, I want to get something right, and when I get it right, I mean, it's just like, I want somebody to come back and feel something, and if I feel like I haven't done that, like, I mean, even if it's just as minuscule as like, I did a phrase or something that didn't quite fit, it still feels like crap.
mm,
It just feels awful because then you're like, and then you're just back in the shit, like, no, I'm going to get it right next time. I'm going to get it right next time. And you're just, you're obsessing about this thing because it's so important. Even though you can keep practicing, like you still want to get it right just in the moment.
it's funny. I was talking to Bob Reynolds about this,
Yeah.
and he was talking about a recording session that he had where the drummer that was on the session, I can't remember the name of the drummer, played this really great solo,
Hmm.
and the drummer came back. So then they came back the next day, and the rest of the band was in there listening to the playback, and then the drummer comes in. He's like, "Oh, you're not going to use that one, are you?" Because in his head,
Yeah.
he could only think of what his intention was. And so since the intention didn't match up exactly with, with the result, there was like this sort of cognitive dissonance with the ability to hear it for what it is, right? And so that's one thing that we have to, you know, figure out how to deal with and to address is like, okay, the way I've tried to start doing this is when I'm playing, it belongs to me. As soon as I'm done playing, it's not mine anymore.
Mhm.
And
Right.
it's easy to say that, really hard to do that.
Yeah.
But, if you're like constantly sculling about this didn't happen the way I want it to, that one didn't either, then it makes it really hard to like actually stay in the moment so that you can, okay, well, all right, that didn't work out, but this is what I'm dealing with right now. How can I really spend all of my resources on really focusing on this thing? And that's one of the things about improvisation is, improvisation, it's not perfect. That's not what we're trying to go for. We're trying to communicate. We're trying to say something that's appropriate for the situation, and Yeah, I mean, we all want to be able to hit that high note in the right place, and you know, uh, we want to be able to, get the most house and stuff. That's applause, right? The,
Right, right,
on
right, right,
things, that's just, you know, that's just human. You want to get a response from people,
right.
but
And I should
yeah,
say, kind of coming out of that, you know what that made me think about? I don't know if you have talked to him yet, but I know he's on the list to talk to, like Kirk Whalum, right? Who is,
yes,
right, uh, a god amongst the living, in the saxophone world. As far as I'm concerned, because you can feel his soul with every note, right?
yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
like one of the things that I aspire to. So I remember talking to him about the most famous saxophone solo in the world, right? Which is the one he played on Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love
yep,
You," right?
yep. I can
Do
hear
you?
it. I can hear it right now. I can
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
it right
yeah.
now. Yep.
Do you know which note still frustrates him to this day? There's a
I don't.
there's a no, okay, so there's that G sharp right in the middle on like the second half of it
Hmm.
goes ridiculously sharp, right? And
Hmm.
you never notice it because it sounds so good. But yet,
Hmm.
like, if you talk to him, he'll probably still bring it up, right? Because I remember
Hmm.
when I talked to you about it, it's like, man, that G sharp was so sharp. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I never even noticed it until he brought it up because the thing sounds so frigging beautiful. But
Yeah.
that's what happens to us, man. Well, it's like, we think about this thing and it's just like, and it's there, and it's hard to disconnect from it.
Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, I will say, I have been trying to be perfect. I really have. Perfection for me has really meant like, hey, no, I do the right thing, exactly the right thing in the moment. And maybe that's not the approach to have to really grow, but it's been from, all of the regiment of training that has kind of like put that mentality into my head. But you're right. It's like, you gotta be able to let that go when the moment just passes. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
don't
Well,
get.
there's perfectionism, and then there's like pursuance of excellence.
Yeah.
And you can be pursuing excellence, and you can have perfection as a goal, but you know, it's as a frame of reference only. Because we're human, so we can't
Right.
actually
Right.
play
Right.
perfectly, right? So it's only as a frame of reference. I think that uh, I think that I'm working on this myself, right?
Mhm.
So because it's easy for me to like to fall into the perfectionism thing. That's it, it's always it doesn't take much for me to get there. And but if I try to think about the growth and the process,
Mhm.
and if okay, well, it's not perfect, but it's like one of the reasons why people record themselves in different time periods. I mean, you hear jazz artists talk a lot about what they call documentation.
Right. Right.
So, okay, so what did I sound like 10 years ago? What did I sound like 8 years ago? So you can go back and you can consult the tape and you can see how you actually have improved. And as long as there's this like sort of trajectory that's showing this line of improvement, one thing that bothers me is if I go back too far, there's certain notes that stick out to me as not being in tune. And
Mhm.
the reason is because my sense of intonation has improved.
Right.
So
Right.
then when I go back and listen to that, I'm like, oh, that's out of tune. But, so that's kind of like what I was thinking about with Kirk. I mean, it could just be his ear has developed since he played that solo. So then when he goes back and listens to the solo, he's like, oh, I thought that was right. But now I know it wasn't right.
Right.
But hey, that's
And to the rest of us, it's just like we don't care. I'm like, dude,
it's
that was
right.
freaking awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the other thing is that pitch and in tone are inexplicably connected.
Yeah.
You can't really separate them. The sense of pitch and the tone are you can't get one out of the other. And so the sort of emotion and the sound that's in his, all of that, even though the note was sharp, that's part of the emotion, that's part of the sound, it's part of the tone. So you can't kind of take that away. you,
Right.
you'd have to have that for it to have the particular impact that that solo had.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And you
So
know the way that it hits just like the trick that they used to do with the old Motown singers. It's like they used to take a song and then like pitch it like a half step up to make the
mm-hmm.
singer strain, right? So
mm,
like you would feel you so that you would hear them, straining with it,
right.
and that became like part of the song. It was genius. It drove the performers crazy, but it was genius in terms of the recording because you like felt those spirits come across.
Yeah.
That exact same thing happens right in that solo.
All right, Keith, can you talk to us a little bit about uh, maybe some projects that you're working on, some different things that are, that are happening, and maybe you want to plug something, maybe you want to talk about something that we haven't talked about yet.
Gosh, I've got nothing to plug because I don't have any PDFs or books or anything coming out like that. But I will say the stuff that I'm working on, mostly when I'm working on music right now, I've been trying to transition for a while into working into film and television
Yeah.
as a writer. And one of the things that I just finished up is this like action sci-fi comedy show called Spaceman Dave and Karen of the Universe. So I know you're looking like, what the hell is this? Okay, fine, I'll explain it. It's about this immutable baby boomer, right? Who inexplicably, jumps through a portal and gets himself trapped on the other side of the galaxy. And now this man with no children somehow finds out that somehow on the other side of the galaxy, he's got a granddaughter. And now he's got to try to figure out whether he's going to go back to his, humdrum life on Earth, or he's going to, hang out with his granddaughter and his, kind of merge interstellar family. If
Mm.
you, yeah, it's a completely, an idea like if you watched a sci-fi show like The Orville, that space comedy, and you mixed it
Mm-hmm.
with like a Xeno Warrior Princess and took 2 shots of tequila, that's your show. Right? But when I do these shows. I also do like pitch for like theme music so that people get an understanding of tone and of what this is. And so I'm spending my time with within my Cubase, using like creating the virtual orchestra, right? And I mean like full on orchestrations. Like this thing sounds like if I had a symphony, I would do that. And that's what I'm spending my time doing that now. I did that for that show, for a couple of animated shows I'm working on called One Inspector Monkey, another one with, and another animated one we're trying to pitch to networks where if we were to get the money to go ahead and produce this thing, it would involve, hiring a symphony orchestra, probably at a discount price somewhere in Prague or somewhere else, to be able to get the soundtracks. But I
Mm-hmm.
find like, I got drawn to that stuff, one, because I want to really be creative, but I want to be creative in my own space. But
Yeah.
also with television, I've never been super great at creating music for the markets. Like I've got music that I create that I like and that small groups of people who kind of like the stuff that I do would like, but not creating something like a top 40 hit. Like that ain't me. But but I know that if I were to try to work in those spaces, I would have to compose music the way that that kind of stuff is written. Whereas in television, I can compose whatever I want, just so long
Mm.
as it helps to carry the story along. And so I haven't had any like great success yet. I mean I haven't been able to buy hair gel for a while, obviously. Um, but hopefully, when one of these things take off, it will give me the experience of being able to share that idea.
I'll give you some of my hair gel. Um,
That's great, man. I see you're
so
still shaving part of it, right? Like half of it is naturally gone and half of it is still there. And I'm just telling you, brother, free yourself from follicle impairment, man. Just let it all go.
Oh no, it's all gone.
You don't shave
Maybe
it anymore?
no, it's shaved. It's shaved all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like mine doesn't grow anymore at all. So it's like,
Oh right, right.
yeah. I mean, I save so much on shampoo. I haven't bought a razor blade in years. It's I'll admit, but until it drops below 70, my life is awesome.
Yeah, my issue is it seems like my hair doesn't go, it's not compatible with my face or my
What?
skin. Yeah, so I have a so I can't shave more than twice a week. If I
Okay.
shave more than twice a week, then my skin is like way too sensitive.
Mm,
But if I go too much longer than that, then it starts to get my skin starts to get irritated,
yeah.
and that is some bonus information for you out there watching. Uh, how about a final word, man? How about a final word? What would you like to? What wisdom would you like to impart?
Okay. There is one piece of wisdom I do want to impart. And it kind of goes along not only with everything music wise that we've been discussing, but also really just life in general. I spent at this point in my life, I'm getting pretty close to 50, right? And I spent a good portion of my life earlier on spending a lot of time trying to satisfy people I didn't need to satisfy. It is one of the biggest
Mm,
regrets that I have to this day because I see more examples now from people of the kind of person and the kind of skills that I could have developed had I not been trying to please other people and to trying to make sure I was doing things the way that I was told versus what my gut told me that I should be doing.
mm,
A good example, when I see like you or I see Hamilton and guys who have like developed skills on multiple instruments so much so that they're indistinguishable in terms of what their main instrument was. That was one of the things that I was going to do earlier in life, and I let myself get talked out of it by teachers who were all very well-meaning, trying to get me to focus on a particular instrument, a particular skill like saxophone. Um, but were but still really didn't know where I was headed, and I let that kind of change my path. Okay, this is the one time where I am going to have to curse, so bear with me. Um, I spent a lot of time taking a lot of other people's shit and
mm,
really absorbing problems that weren't mine to absorb. And that has affected a lot of my development and my psyche, and a lot of things that when you look back and you look back on the time that you've spent doing things, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to spend time being proud of the things that you have developed and you've nurtured and the people that you've helped along the way. And you're also going to, and you also may have this type of regrets of things that you haven't done or that you would still like to do, and then find it even more challenging in your later years to be able to tackle earlier than they would have been earlier. So if there's one kind of piece of advice that I can offer, it's really know that inside your head and inside your heart, you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You know exactly where your path is leading, and you may not be able to exactly verbalize it yet, but there are always these things which are guiding you along the path. And I would say that, I am fortunate that I've been able to offset enough of the things that I wish I had done with a lot of the people and the relationships that I've developed, which have led to, unexpected but, really meaningful growth. The book experience working with you, Sean, was one of those experiences, which was great. But even before that, being able to work with you just in terms of learning to play the instrument and knowing your openness to being able to share, is just one of the is one of the things that will always stick with me, because I remember the very first lesson I had with you. Because I already came in, having been a saxophonist for a career. You already knew who I was. I already knew who you were. Got into a room, and we're like, well, what are we going to do? And I looked at you and I said, hey, I want your saxophone superpowers. I don't want to sound like you, but I do want to leverage your skills to be able to get to this level. Do you remember what you said to me?
I do not.
You said one word, okay, and then you just showed me how to do it, and you just laid it out, right? Because that's you, right? And it was one of the things that I realized, okay, I need to make sure I stay in contact with this person, because you're valuable because of multiple reasons. Your skill is not that you play multiple instruments all the time, right? That's not your skill. Your skill is goal setting, right? Your skill is, hey, I want to do this thing. I'm going to go do this thing. And when people would say to me, like, what do you mean his skill is goal setting? I said, look at him. You don't end up with this body by accident, right? It wasn't like you woke up like, oh my God, I fell into a tub of mussels. No, right? Like you developed that, right? When you decided like, okay, I'm going to, go ahead and play this. I'm going to play this. I'm going to learn this. And you're picking up other instruments. You're the guy who's going to be like, hey, the whole world is exploding around me. Oh, I'm still going to develop this skill, right? These are people like you want to know. And the fact that you're just like, you're open and you want to have conversations with people and share and learn. Like, these are the things that I value. And I've had not only that experience with you, but that experience with, other guys we know, like Dr. Cox, who's been on the program with you, and Hamilton and Steve, and many, many more others whose names I'm forgetting to mention. But the point is this, is that, by being able to leverage and connect with people who are willing to share and being willing to open and just not, and are there to kind of like help you achieve and go, you're going to have a much better experience, and you're going to really start to open your mind to the possibilities of what's there for you. So it's not to compete with the people around you, but to look around you to see who's going to be there, to help you get to the next level. And, that's, I haven't been successful with that across the board in my life, but I am glad to say that, I have that relationship with you. And I thank you so much for being able to be, that kind of colleague, man.
Oh, you got it, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for the kind words, and thank you so much for your time and energy. God bless you and your family. Be safe, stay safe, and be well. And I look forward to rapping with you again soon. Hopefully, much sooner than this time.
We should toast to that, man. We really should. That's right. It's the bit that's never going to go away, my friend. Remember, somebody who speaks English as a second language thinks that this is your soda.
And you know what? It is my soda. I have a lot of it.
Wait, are you still sitting on that original?
Oh my goodness.
Put in your office?
I have not even scratched the surface of that Dr. Thunder. Not at all.
You mean it's still sitting on the piano?
Well, no. I moved it. It's all under the piano. All of it is under the piano. But I'm saying, as far as consuming said product, I have not even scratched the surface. So but I think the half-life on that stuff is probably like 1,000,000 years or something. So I'm good, right? Okay. So I have time to consume it, so I'll be all right.
That'll be good.
All right, man. Well, God bless you.
God bless you, man.
All right. See you later.
See ya.